We are back talking about the 2026 offseason for the NFL. And on this episode, we are talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. So Anthony Miller joins us from Inside the Eagles, and a lot going on with the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason. So it's a good time to have Anthony on. How's it going, Anthony?
Saying a lot's going on is a very big understatement, Greg, but I appreciate the invite and looking forward to talking about the chaos that is possibly going to be the Eagles offseason.
Yeah, it is definitely good timing to have you on. No question about that. So let's get right into it, because most of what is going on has to do with the coaching staff. And I think we all felt pretty confident when the season was over that the Eagles were going to be looking for a new offensive coordinator. So let's start there. Again, no surprise, Patulu's gone. Sean Mannion gets the job. Was that a surprise? What do you think about the move, and what did the fan base think about it?
So at first it was a surprise because the first week or so his name was not brought up because it was Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll were the top candidates. And then all of a sudden McDaniel wanted the Chargers job. Daboll, it looked like he was going to go to Tennessee. So the Eagles were kind of left scrambling to find candidates. And, at the beginning of the search process, it was going to be they wanted an experienced coordinator. They wanted somebody who's called the plays before, they didn't want anyone brand new.
Sure.
But then I think as soon as they started going through the candidates and names started dropping off, then I think it became, okay, maybe we need to think outside the box and bring in somebody who is maybe young and innovative, somebody from the Sean McVay tree or the Kyle Shanahan tree, like somebody fresh and new that maybe can get the Eagles fans more excited than like doing a retread like Matt Nagy, which the city of Philadelphia would have erupted if Nagy would have gotten the job. So my initial reaction with Mannion getting the job at first was I was upset about it. I can't lie. I was like, I didn't understand the move because the whole purpose of moving away from Kevin Patullo was to bring in somebody with experience with play calling. And the most experience that Mannion's got with play calling was literally just doing the East-West Shrine game as the offense coordinator for the West team, literally just a few days before he got the job. So it's like, that wasn't really what we needed. But as cooler heads prevailed, I think it's a good move for the Eagles. It's a risky move for sure, but you're bringing in somebody who's young. He's been only a coach for 2 years, but Mannion was a backup for a long time. He's worked with a lot of good coaches like Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay, and he's learned from them. And I think he can bring something unique to the table that I don't know if somebody like Matt Nagy would have been able to do. I think he can bring a whole new style of offense that's going to open up. If you look at how the Packers run their offense, a lot of it's under center, which is where Jalen Hurts thrived last year. Every time that he was under center, it seems like it was a highly successful play. So I think Mannion can bring a little something to the table. The only concern I have is I kind of want it to be more Mannion's offense versus Nick Sirianni getting involved. And I feel like Sirianni is going to get a little bit more involved because Sean Mannion's a very new coach, very fresh, never been an offensive coordinator. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of collaboration at the beginning, but I wouldn't mind seeing the Eagles kind of move away from what they've done for the last few years and be, 60% running, 40% passing, and kind of flip it and see if they can be more balanced or see if they can really open up the passing game. So it's interesting to have Sean Mannion there. I think he can succeed. It might be one of those hires where maybe it happens a little too soon and the Eagles just need to give him time to get comfortable in the role. But, all indications when you watch the Packers offense, how they run things, if they do, if the Eagles run the same thing they do, then I think it's already going to be an improvement over what Kevin Patullo did a season ago.
Okay. So then as far as scheme, are there going to be enough changes that we need to keep an eye on how personnel might also change, or not so much? It'll be a lot easier bringing Mannion over based, like you said, on what the Eagles already do. So how is that going to affect personnel?
So they just hired Josh Grizzard, who was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. So that to me is already a big indication that I think changes are coming because on Friday, Sean Mannion met with all of the position coaching staffs for the Eagles, and he met with, or either he's meeting with Nick Sirianni or has already met with Nick Sirianni over the weekend to talk about who he likes to keep, who he wants to go. So there's been nothing yet about if any reports of any more changes have been made, but there was a big thing last week with Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, basically got his run game coordinator title removed in the middle of last season because of the struggles with the running game. I would say watch out for Stoutland. Maybe he just stays as the offensive line coach, or maybe they could force him into retirement. I don't know, because that was a big rumor, is Stoutland still going to be on this staff? I would assume so, because he's kind of, he feels like he's a legacy for the Eagles. So I don't think he'll leave, but I would assume that the run game coordinator position probably gets taken away from him and he's just the offensive line coach. But there could be some changes because this is going to be a very different scheme from what they have been running.
Okay.
And I think Sirianni is okay with making those changes if he needs to, because I do feel like there is some pressure on him that, he's taking a big risk with Mannion. And I think for him, it's okay, I'm putting all my chips on the table, going all in. If this works, great. If it doesn't, then, could end up being Nick Sirianni's job.
Which is why you think he's going to be more hands-on.
Yeah, I think there is a sort of pressure with taking a risk with someone like Mannion, even though he is a young offensive mind, could bring something new to the table. But everyone wanted a seasoned coach. Everyone wanted a Brian Dable or Mike McDaniel. They didn't land one. So, I think
with all those openings, that's what everybody says they want. And there's only so many of those guys around. So not everybody can get them, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too was it's a different beast to coach in Philadelphia. You're dealing with the media, you're dealing with the fans. Kevin Patullo's house got egged last year just because of, his bad play calling. So I don't know if it was as desirable of a job if it is, but if you do succeed, then you end up like Shane Steichen or Kellen Moore and end up getting a head coaching job at the end of the day, or like a Jonathan Gannon who also got a head coaching job. So you can succeed in this, in this city as long as you do well. But if you don't do well, then you end up like Brian Johnson or Kevin Patullo and get the boot after 1 year.
Yeah, it takes a certain individual. And
yes.
Okay, so because of some of those changes you're talking about to the offense, what specifically are you talking about? Are you talking about, again, not necessarily how much you think they're going to run to pass, but just the style of play? Are they going to look to change personnel grouping packages, you think, more, statistically speaking? More 3 receivers, more 3 tight ends, anything specific that you think that of from what you've heard so far that we should be keeping an eye
on? They're going to move away from the simplicity of the offense that the Eagles were last year. A lot of what you watch with the Eagles was a lot of hitch routes. It was a lot of out routes, slant routes, just keeping it short. They didn't really push the ball down the field as much. I think you're going to see a little bit more aggression. I think you'll see more crossing routes, drag routes, 10, 15, 20 yards down the field.
Okay.
Attack the middle of the field a little bit more, which will be kind of an adjustment for Jalen Hurts, because if you want to talk about one thing he's not particularly good at is throwing in the middle of the field, which was what caused him to throw a lot of interceptions back in 23 with Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, is that it was too many deep ball shots down the field and too many, deep passes in the middle of the field. So there's going to be a little bit of adjustment when it comes down to the passing game and really open it up. But I do think there'll be more play action, a lot more under center. And I think that'll be a good thing for Jalen because he's at least comfortable with that. But this offense, I think, is going to kind of push Jalen out of his comfort zone a bit with what he's been doing over the last few years, which I think will be a positive thing for him at the end of the day. We saw what Mannion did with, Malik Willis and Jordan Love last year and the great work he did. Jordan Love had statistically probably the best season of his career. He only threw 6 picks in 15 games, which was the first time in his career he's ever thrown less than 10 picks. And then you had Malik Willis, who came into, for Jordan Love and was super accurate and did a really good job. So I think how Mannion worked with them, hoping that it will be kind of the same success with Jalen in this offense.
Okay. And over on the defensive side, news that was really not expected. Vic Fangio retirement talk, and considering Jonathan Gannon and Jim Schwartz are still available, this is one of those things that the Eagles got to get straightened out very fast, don't they? Did this catch Sirianni off guard, or what's going on here?
Well, it's one of those things where it's always in the back of everyone's mind because Fangio is getting up there in age. He is getting close to, he won his Super Bowl. So after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, that's where the first part of the conversations kind of started, where it wasn't very loud noise to be covered, but it was like one of those things where everyone kept in the back of their minds, like, okay, he could retire at any time. I think this move was, I think it threw the Eagles off a bit, and I know they persuaded him to. There's been so many conflicting reports on they persuaded him to stay, but apparently there's still an opportunity for him to still retire. So it's like nothing is 100% yet. And then they did reach out to Jonathan Gannon. They did reach out to Jim Schwartz. Gannon is no longer an option because he's now the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Schwartz is still very much an option, but the problem with Schwartz is he runs a much different defense from Fangio does. So you're going to have to completely flip how you run that defense from what they, did before. But with Schwartz, he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. So the Eagles would rather trust somebody that's proven to already win a Super Bowl. And he also took a Browns defense, and that team was terrible last year, only won 5 games. They were still number 2 defense in the NFL in total yards allowed. So for me,
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to take the risk, I think it's definitely worth it with Jim Schwartz. I'm just disappointed that I would be interested to know when the conversations were being had. It made it seem like it was after the season. And if it was after the season, did the Eagles not have a conversation with Christian Parker and be like, hey, even if Fangio stays on, could you stay maybe one more year? We can guarantee you the defensive coordinator job, because they ended up losing him to the Dallas Cowboys, and that's a massive loss because he's one of the up and rising coaches in the NFL and may end up being a head coach in the next 5 years, and the Eagles completely lost an opportunity to keep him. So if you have an offseason where you fire your offensive coordinator, you may end up losing your defensive coordinator and your number 2 in command on defense. That's not a good offseason for the Eagles, and it could leave them in a lot of trouble. Even if they bring in Jim Schwartz, who is experienced and is a proven coordinator, that's still a big scheme change you're going to have to make with the Eagles defense. And I still think it can get kind of messy, especially with a young defense in Philadelphia. A lot of those guys are under 25 years old. They just learned this scheme, and to throw something else completely at them, it could throw up their development and could make 2026 a very interesting year for Philly.
Yeah, that sounds very un-Eagles-like regarding the instability of what's going on here. Because like you said, it does not make any sense. If they truly felt that they had a rising star that was going to get the job as defensive coordinator in the next year or two, could even be this year, to just let him go. Not only to let him go, but to go to the Cowboys. It seemed like they dropped the ball somewhere. Like there was some communication that just completely because I would be, if I felt that I really didn't want to lose a certain coach on my staff, and he was definitely going to be our coordinator. And who knows, maybe in time he could even be our head coach. And I got a guy that, yes, I won a Super Bowl with, but it's obvious that he's at an age that he's probably going to be thinking about retiring every year. I got to force the guy out and just hire the young guy and move him up. I got to be proactive. I can't allow this. Again, this doesn't make sense to me. This is like something that teams that have missed 10 straight playoff appearances, like the Jets or the Browns. These are things that those organizations do, not the Eagles.
I mean, the good news for the Eagles, though, is they do have a good coaching staff. So even with Christian Parker out, if, God forbid, they didn't get Jim Schwartz and Fangio retires, I think Clint Hurt, who is the defensive line coach, could step in. He was a defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks for a few years.
Yep.
He knows how to be a coordinator. It wouldn't be much of a scheme change for that defense. And he's done a phenomenal job with the defensive line. Especially, the development with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Moro Jomo, he's done a phenomenal job with that defensive line. That would be a logical move as well. So there are pieces on that defensive coaching staff where somebody else could move up if Fangio ends up retiring later than expected. But yeah, it seems like the Eagles didn't proactively plan for this to happen. And it's slightly disappointing, but also, when you look at the track record of, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, I kind of tend to be like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because they seem to be on top of things that, usually Howie's the one that knows proactively when to cut a player, when to trade him, or when to, give him an extension. So this is one I'll mark up as I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll see what happens, in the next week or so, what happens with Fangio and then what happens with 2026. If this ends up being a massive mistake or, what the future holds.
I second that. That's how I would react as well. Okay, so that's the coaching staff. Now let's talk about cap space seems to be fine. And then we're going to get into other personnel here in just a minute with free agency. Picks are also this could be a good year for draft capital, right?
Yeah, it typically is. Howie's really good at being able to kind of load up. I think they have a couple of third round picks. They may be waiting for some compensatory picks as well. Okay. So I think there'll be some wiggle room if they wanted to potentially move up in the draft or move back and just collect on picks in the future. So we've seen Howie kind of do a little bit of both. So I'm not really sure what the strategy is going to be this year, but from his end of year press conference, he definitely made it seem like he kind of hinted at, hey, like even if we don't make a lot of moves in free agency, we're still building for the future and could be a little more active in the draft than we think.
Okay. Before we get to free agency, what's going on with AJ Brown? What is it? I mean, from the outside perspective, everything that I heard, again, this is why we have you on, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that happens just during, whether it's during the football games and something you hear and just reports from the outside and you're not with the team. You just say to yourself, why you understand why you deal with certain players. I completely get that. You won a Super Bowl with them, and that's the whole reason you deal with stuff like this. But you did win a Super Bowl. Now it's time, in my opinion, you've won the Super Bowl with them. Just move on. This can't keep going on. Am I wrong?
Not 100%. The problem is the Eagles kind of pigeonholed themselves in the contract. So if they were to let him go, I know there's some reports that have said, like, yes, they could end up saving, if they trade him after June 1st, they could save about $7 million, the salary cap. But the Eagles are still dealing with, if they let him go this year, it's $79 million of dead cap. So that could really set them back a few years when it comes down to making any kind of move. So it's one of those things where, for me personally, if you're offered a first round pick for AJ Brown, I think you take it. You might even consider a second round pick and do it. But like, I've seen a lot of people starting to devalue AJ Brown a little bit and saying like, oh, it may be a third and a fifth round pick for him. If it's that case, then there's no point in doing it because he's way better than that. Even if there was some regression in his play last year, I still think he's one of the top 10, top 15 receivers in the league. And I don't think it's worth it to, get a late day 2, early day 3 draft pick just to get him off.
So you don't think he's that big an issue in the locker room?
The Eagles been doing it for 2 years. So, and there's always a lot of drama that goes on with Philly. It seemed to intensify a lot more this year, but like AJ it was very similar in 2024 where him and Jalen Hurts had their differences because Jalen wasn't getting him the ball as often. So It's something the Eagles have grown accustomed to. Is
Okay.
it annoying on the outside from a fan's perspective? Absolutely. But I think that team has kind of embraced it and they don't really mind it because a lot of what AJ Brown was, what he said last year was kind of the truth. I mean, I think if it was just complete false information, then I think a lot of people would be more upset about it. But a lot of what he was said about the offense struggling and stuff like that was 100% the truth. You may not want him to say it publicly, but
Yeah.
he was right. And there was no arguing against it. So that's why you can kind of let it slide a little bit. But I mean, just with the contract, I just don't think the Eagles have really put themselves in a position where this year could happen.
Okay.
I think the dead cap goes down to like about 35 million in 2027. I would say that's probably when you can start really considering it, if you need to. But yeah, it seems like right now everyone is trying to push for the narrative on AJ Brown to be traded, but I'm just not 100% bought in that it's going to happen because it's just going to ruin the Eagles financially. And if they do, then they can't do anything in free agency for a while. I think it's going to be strictly Howie Roseman's going to focus on the draft and just hope that the young players will step up. But I mean, you got to start thinking about all the players are going to have to pay in the next few years. I mean, they still have to give Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. They're going to have to give Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. They're all going to have to get new contracts. I mean, they're going to have to probably pay Jalen Phillips $17 million a year this offseason. So it's like, if you get rid of AJ Brown, you're kind of killing yourself on doing it, despite the fact that there's an extra
right.
20 million coming in for salary cap. So unless
you get an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah. First round pick. Yeah, I would probably consider it.
Okay, so here are the free agents right now, and there are some interesting names. Sticking with offense, you got Goddard and Dotson. Those are the big names, tight end and receiver. Now, I think this is part of the problem that when you're looking at the Eagles offense and you're looking at some of the struggles, you say, I mean, it just didn't make any sense. Even when they won the Super Bowl, it didn't really make much sense. But the last couple of years, especially this past year, it's like they made the deal to get Dotson, and it's like I thought he's a pretty good player. I'm not saying he's like some sort of a star player, but it just doesn't. He doesn't do anything on this team. I don't understand how this guy doesn't get any sort of traction with this offense. But I'm assuming he's gone because again, he hasn't done anything. Correct me if I'm wrong. Goddard, he is getting a little bit older, even though he's still valuable. And if they let him go, they got nothing because it looks like also Calcaterra is a free agent and he hasn't yet taken that next step. So talk about those two guys. Do you expect either one to be back?
Dawson, absolutely not. And I don't know if I would pin everything on him. This was kind of the one disappointing thing about Kevin Patullo as well, is that before the season, he was like, hey, I have a plan for Dotson. I know how I'm going to use him. We figured out the problems from last year, and it was basically the same thing. He did score a couple of touchdowns, so he did make some big plays. So it was really just one or two, but it was improvement from 2024. But I just don't think the Eagles' offense, how it was ran, I don't think they knew how to use a wide receiver 3 because Dallas Goedert was the wide receiver 3, and even for Goddard, yes, he broke the franchise record for touchdowns for a tight end at 11, and that's great. But I still don't think it was exactly the best year for him either. It was the first time in his career that he averaged less than 10 yards of reception. So the production wasn't there per catch. And a lot of the touchdowns, if you look, were those, the fake tush push, cost plays to him.
Handoff.
For 1 or 2 yard touchdowns. So Goddard, I don't think is going to come back either. I just don't see the Eagles finding the money to get him. And the Eagles have had a good track record of using the draft to, go in the first or second round and find a tight end. You look at guys like Brent Selleck, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert himself. They've been able to find really good talent, in the draft for a tight end and make them the starters. So I would fully expect Goddard to not be back, and someone's going to overpay for him because, even though he was healthier last year, he's still got the durability issue that I'm concerned about with him because he's missed like 16 games in the last 4 years. So I just don't 100% trust him to stay healthy, especially when he's 31 years old. And then Dotson, there's no way he's coming back.
Okay. And if that happens, then are you looking at like a completely new tight end room? Because Granson as well is a free agent.
Yeah, Calcaterra, I would not bring back either. He is the absolute worst blocking tight end in the NFL. Just was horrendous in run blocking. I would not bring him back. And, he wasn't a great receiver either. So, yeah, and Granson, I think, is a free agent as well. I would consider bringing him back. I don't think he would be a bad option because I think you want at least one veteran in there, but he's not. Right. He's not going to be your starter. Like he'd be a solid backup for like a rookie that gets brought in for the Eagles. But yeah, I think outside of like Cameron Latu, I would keep him just because he can play fullback as well, and he's a really good special teams player. But outside of that, yeah, you're going to have to rebuild that tight end room because I wouldn't bring back Goddard. I wouldn't bring back Calcaterra. Granson, I would potentially bring back if he's a cheap option on a 1-year deal. And Latu, I would 100% bring back because he's just a valuable special teamer as well as a really good fullback.
Okay. Also on offense, the offensive line, Pryor, Johnson, and Toth are all free agents. And I guess this also depends on the health of the offensive line. That was just a nightmare season for the Eagles as far as trying to keep their offensive line healthy. Johnson played an awful lot. So do they want to, do you think they'll be able to bring back, or who do you think that they want to bring back out of those three?
I would bring back Fred Johnson for sure. I thought he played well late in the season at right tackle. I don't think he was perfect at it, but I thought he did enough that I think he earned the right to come back another season if he wants to. I am a little concerned about how much it's going to cost to bring him back because I think he proved that, he may not be the greatest starter, but he could step in and be a starter elsewhere for a team that's just really desperate for a cheap offensive lineman. Matt Pryor, I wouldn't bring back with a 30-foot pole just after that Week 3 Rams game. He was just absolutely horrendous at right tackle in place of Lane Johnson, and then really never got back on the field again the rest of the year. So Fred Johnson, if the price is right, I would definitely bring him back. I think he's earned the right to.
And yeah, because when I take a look at the depth chart here, of course, they have the two rookies who they drafted last year at tackle. And so one would think that this is one of the situations where it all depends on what they think of these two rookies. Because if you need to save money elsewhere and Johnson winds up getting and you're right. I mean, offensive linemen, as we know, especially tackles, it's so hard to find. That's the Chargers. So, guys like that are going to get overpaid. And if the Eagles feel like they can't pay that, then I guess it's going to depend on whether or not Cameron Williams or Miles Hinton can fill in 2026 as a backup role player, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know anything about Cameron Williams because he was injured for most of the year. So I don't think we even know like if he could be the real deal or not.
Yeah.
He could be good, but we just don't know. Hinton, he was decent in preseason, but as a rookie, there's a learning curve there. So I wouldn't trust either one to be starters for sure. So I do think the Eagles need to bring in some depth. I would not be surprised if there's a lot of talks about, could they go tight end in the first round of the NFL draft? Could they go wide receiver and find A.J. Brown's replacement? Could they go cornerback and find a CB2? It wouldn't surprise me if they went offensive tackle in the first round. If there's somebody they really like, I mean, the Eagles are notorious for going after offensive, defensive linemen and building up front because that's just something that's worked over the last 20 plus years. That started back with, Andy Reid, and Howie Roseman hasn't changed that philosophy since. So if they find an offensive tackle they really like that can step in and be the future replacement for Lane Johnson, I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route too. They need to do something about the offensive line because I don't think the depth is quite there like it has been in the past.
Yeah. So, because what is the status of Lane Johnson right now at his age? The injury issues last year, and what's his contract like?
I believe he's might have one more year on his deal, possibly. Okay. I don't think
he talked about retirement at all.
Not him personally. Like he hasn't come out and publicly said it, but it's definitely been a big topic, I think, behind closed doors for him contemplating, and I think the foot injury maybe kind of escalated that a little bit more than it should have. Now, I remember last offseason, he, kind of poo-pooed the idea of retirement because he was like, I'm the best is yet to come for me. Like, I can still play at a high level. And he proved it. I mean, the first 10 games of the year, he didn't allow a single quarterback hit or quarterback sack in those 10 games. Like, he can still play at a high level, but his problem is he just gets banged up all the time. And it's been like that for the last 2 to 3 years. Now, he's been lucky he hasn't missed this many games, but I think finally this year it kind of caught up to him a little bit. And that's where my concern comes with him is, can he stay healthy for a full season without getting banged up every single game?
Yeah, because that shows you exactly how and why that's going to be important for the Eagles to have a potential, at least part-time starter at tackle. Okay. Also, as far as free agency, let's pop that back on the screen. And for the offense, the only other guys that are free agents are Dylan, Howell. So nothing big there. And that's it. So, yeah, they're just going to – you think they'll just let Dylan and Howell go? And I have to ask you, speaking of Howell and the quarterback position, I think we talked about this before the season. And I know what the Eagles have said, and I completely understand it. And I think that makes a lot of sense. What would it take for the Eagles to trade Tanner McKee? What do they need to get in order to do that?
After the Commanders game in week 18, well, before that, I would say they need a second round pick. After his performance against Commanders, I wouldn't say he hurt his stock too much, but I think the Eagles would probably have to settle for like a 4th round pick if they wanted Tanner McKee, because I don't think he comes in. If that week 18 game had gone better, then I think McKee would probably be getting calls for, the Eagles would be getting calls for him to get a 2nd round pick out of him. And I think the Eagles would jump at it. I think now, I just don't know if his value is quite where the Eagles would be comfortable enough in trading him. So, and I don't know what they would do as the backup, because they tried drafting Kyle McCord. He was an epic fail. Now he's with the Packers. And, Sam Howell, I doubt they could bring him back. I don't know if they 100% will, but I think at this point you would probably prefer to keep Tanner McKee as a backup just to have that solid, a solid guy back there. So I don't know if he's going to get traded at this point. I think the Eagles, if the Eagles really wanted to, they probably should have pulled the trigger last offseason with it. But there's also a part of me that's kind of glad they didn't, because I think Tanner McKee is a really solid backup, and I'd rather just have a good backup.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Again, the quarterback position. This is why I'm kind of surprised, even though, like you said, we don't know. I mean, because he'd have to change team, change systems, change everything, and you have no idea if that'll make him better, worse, whatever. But there's such a dearth of quarterback talent. I mean, there's such a. I mean, these GMs. That's why when I hear people even questioning whether the Raiders are going to take Mendoza, it just cracks me up. It's like, you can't, these guys, they don't grow on trees. Mm-hmm. If you get a quarterback that you feel is going to have the ability to be no worse than Jared Goff, you take him, you draft him, and you move on. That would be a fireable offense. Maybe even for the entire league if the Raiders had traded out for that pick. But that's why they're going to take Mendoza. And that's why I'm a little bit surprised that, because he's young enough and he's shown enough glimpses of it, especially maybe even this offseason, that if he doesn't get traded, it's like, why wouldn't you trade for this guy? Nobody else is out there. And there's like 5 or 6 teams that need quarterbacks. I mean, Malik Willis, everybody's going to go after Malik Willis. And that's how desperate they are for quarterbacks. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's obviously still, nobody knows if Malik Willis is going to be a starting quarterback in this league, but that just shows you how hard it is to find starting quarterback talent, which is why if you're a team, I think you have to, 2nd, 3rd round, whatever it takes. Hey, I got to try it. I mean, what else am I going to do? Draft somebody in the 4th round, another rookie? I mean, I'm just very surprised that teams have not. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe the asking price, maybe they did call last offseason. It was too high. And they were like, I'm not going to give you a 2nd round pick for this guy, whatever. So yeah, I just think it's going to be. I just because Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's still in the prime of his career. He's not going anywhere. So you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that, or let's just put it this way: I'm still going to be very surprised if he's still on the team this year. That's going to be a bad look for GMs around the NFL that they're not willing to give the Eagles, a second, third, or fourth round draft pick for Tanner McKee.
Well, if Tanner McKee does get traded, then I think it opens up a can of worms that it would not surprise me at all if the Eagles took a quarterback in the first or second round, because this is usually around the time, same thing happened with Carson Wentz a few years back where he was about fourth, fifth year in the NFL, putting up decent numbers, but there was some regression a little bit. And Howie was like, you know what, let me just draft Jalen Hurts just in case. That ended up paying off for them. It wouldn't surprise me. Jalen's regressed maybe a tad bit, but I still think he's in a much better spot than Carson Wentz was. But Howie's all about, like, we are a QB factory. We want to bring in as many good quarterbacks as possible. If they do trade Tanner McKee, then I think it's almost certain that a first or second round pick is going to be used on a quarterback. And I think that would cause even more drama in Philly. And I think that's the last thing they need, but they would need to find something to do at backup, because Sam Howell I think would be a decent backup, but I don't know if I would particularly love him there either.
Yeah, and you know what? I think this is actually going to be a really good crop of those types of quarterbacks. Again, it all depends on where they go. I mean, again, right now, especially Nussmeier, the week he had, I think it'd be a first-round pick again. Maybe you get 3 first-round quarterbacks this year, but still, you're looking at Chambliss, you're looking at Beckar, Drew. You can draft those guys, and those guys at the worst should be really good backup material. And so if the Eagles would draft one of those guys in round 2 or round 3, that would make sense to me. But of course, I understand what you're saying. You draft quarterbacks that high and what that does. But I mean, hasn't Jalen Hurts earned enough in this organization that, okay, well, if you draft a guy in the second, third round, that doesn't mean anything to me. You need a backup. I mean, how does that affect me?
Yeah, but the Hurts conversation is really interesting right now, because I think it's very polarizing in how people feel about him. Because there's a lot of reports out there, that some people say, that there's a lot of limitations to Jalen Hurts. And, Kevin Patullo, before he got removed as the offensive coordinator, made a comment to somebody, and I don't remember who it was, but it got brought back saying, like, oh, Kevin was saying, like, he was almost like limited in what he could do, or people just don't understand, like, the limitations he had or something, that he had to deal with as a play caller. So that brought into some questions about, like, are there certain plays that Jalen Hurts can run or not? Because, like, there was also reports in the middle of the season that Jalen Hurts said he didn't want to run as many QB design plays or QB design runs so that he didn't take as many hits and didn't get hurt. So, a lot of people think that might have played a role in the offensive coordinator search as well. Did people want to deal with Jalen Hurts? Do people think that, there's too many limitations that you can't really open up the offense with Jalen Hurts? So I think this time around with Sean Mannion, I think could kind of expose a little bit about Jalen. And if there are limitations with him, then that could open up the floodgates for, a potential QB change in the future. Do I think they should make a change? Absolutely not. I think no matter what Jalen Hurts, I know he's not perfect, but the man's a winner. He's won nearly 70% of his games.
Yeah,
and you can't find quarterbacks like that, even if he's not the greatest quarterback in the world. Is he a top 10 quarterback? No, but does he win games? Yeah, that's all that matters to me. He's taking the Eagles to 2 Super Bowls in 4 or 5 years. So I would go ahead and just, ride off the coattails of him and have, average performances versus, somebody like a Jordan Love, who's not even been to the NFC Championship.
Okay. So now let's move our attention to defense for free agents. And we see here, there are some questions. So matter of fact, there are 5 edge rushers on the board, but you believe Jalen Phillips, he's going to be will he be the primary target for the Eagles to re-sign?
Probably, yeah. And I'm almost hesitant to pay him because right now his estimate value I think could be between 14 to 17 million a year, and that kind of scares me to pay him that kind of money because he does have an injury history. But his impact on the defense last year was just so massive that it's almost hard to ignore the fact that we got to bring him back in some capacity. It's just we're gonna have to just bite the bullet and pay him for it. Um, yeah, like I'm hesitant on paying him, but I feel I just don't. I think Jalen Hunt is going to be a freaking star in this league. He
Okay.
was phenomenal last year. He was I think he's only the second player in NFL history to lead his team in interceptions and sacks. So I think there is huge upside potential with him. Nolan Smith had his injury, so I think he was kind of good late in the season, but the problem is the edge rusher position is just not as strong as it can be. So I feel like they're going to probably have no choice but to bring back Jalen Phillips. And I think that could cause some problems with, like, I know we'll probably talk about these guys in a second, but looking at like Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship and bringing those guys back.
Yes, because before we get to those, is Josh Uche do they like him as a role guy? Is he going to come back? Because he shouldn't be too expensive, even though, again, edge rushers are very much like offensive tackles. It's very rare to get a hold of them, so you want to keep them if you think you got talent. Do the Eagles think that there's talent there?
I mean, Uche is such an interesting story because when you look at him the first half of the season, like before Jalen Phillips got traded to the Eagles, I would say Uche was probably the best pass rusher on that team. Like I thought he was really productive. He wasn't getting the sacks, but no one else was. But he was getting to the quarterback more than anyone else. He was leading the team in pressures. And then once Jalen Phillips and Brandon Graham came back into the picture, Uche kind of fell off the ropes there. Like he fell deep in the depth charts, wasn't really part of the rotation as much. Did a lot more special team stuff, and I thought he did decent with the special teams. So I don't know if he's going to get brought back or not. I just don't think he got used enough in the second half of the year to justify. But if he is a cheap option, I would absolutely bring him
Sure.
back in a heartbeat. Like if you get him at a veteran minimum, 100%, he would probably be the one that I would 100% re-sign and bring it back. And I would try to get him more in the rotation more because I thought he did play really well the first half of the season. He just wasn't getting the sacks.
Yeah, I get the feeling that, again, like I said, I think someone's going to overpay for him. They just don't come around very often. So a team out there looking for edge rush talent, probably going to pay him the way the Eagles won't want to, or just don't have the cash for. But we'll see. Okay, and then Ojulari, he can go, right?
Oh, 100%. He's the biggest disappointment for me. I hyped him up at the beginning of the season because I thought he was going to be great, but he got injured and then just got out of the rotation altogether. I think he played a little bit in the Broncos and Giants games, but that was really it for him. He was pretty much on inactive pretty much the whole season, and he was on IR, so I doubt he comes back.
Okay. And of course, Brandon Graham, what is he just going to keep doing this every year? As I'm retired, but maybe I'll come back in November, December.
I mean, he's talking like he wants to come back, so there is
Like in August.
I don't know. He may come back for training camp. I mean,
Wow.
there
Okay.
seems I would say there's probably more certainty with him coming back this year than it was last offseason.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
I mean, you got to think Brandon Graham. It took him a little bit to get there, but the last 3-4 games of the year, I thought he was super productive at defensive tackle. So I actually do think if Brandon Graham wanted to come back, he would be in the rotation. He wouldn't be a starter, but I think he would rotate in there and actually do a pretty good job. So I wouldn't completely count out Brandon Graham retiring. I think he might come back for 2026.
So was he playing just as much inside as he was on the edge, or what was that?
Yeah, so he was rotating in with when Jalen Carter got hurt. They
Okay.
ended up putting him and Brandon Graham in the rotation because it was Jordan Davis and Morrow in at a defensive tackle, and Graham was kind of going back and forth, but he was playing a little bit more nose tackle. And played pretty well. I mean, he showed some good stuff. But the thing with Brandon Graham is, as an edge rusher, he's not really a fit for what Vic Fangio needs in an edge rusher, because those edge rushers need to be athletic, which is why like Jalen Hunt worked out really well, because he's just a super athletic edge rusher who can drop back into coverage and do that. Brandon Graham's not going to drop back into coverage. So him being a nose tackle actually makes a lot more sense. And he actually did pretty well with it. So he might be able to find like a second wind in his career at nose tackle if he wanted to come back for 26. And I'm sure the Eagles would bring it back 100%.
Okay. And then also on defense, you mentioned Dean. So what's up with Dean? He's only 26 years old. So do you think the Eagles should bring him back?
I think Dean is a great player. He just gets injured a lot. I think this is his only problem. He's not reliable. And in this league, availability is key. And when Dean is on the field, like last year, I thought he was the best blitzing linebacker in the NFL. He did so well in pressuring the quarterback and being used on the blitz for Fangio. Like, he's a great fit for the defense. I think Jahad Campbell played well enough that if they let Dean walk in free agency and get overpaid elsewhere, I think the Eagles' linebacker core would be okay. We can have Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell in the middle. I know like some people want Campbell to be off the edge as well, and I think you could still use him as an edge rusher. But Jahad Campbell played really well inside. Like, he kind of exceeded my expectations of how much of an impact he made, to the point where I'm okay with him staying in the starting lineup. And then I love Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I love for him to get more playing time. He was incredible in that week 18 against the Commanders. So I'd love for him to get in the rotation. So as much as I love Dean, and I think he is definitely a starting linebacker in the NFL, it depends on how much he's going to cost. I mean, if he's pushing for 8-10 mil a year, I'd probably just say no, thank you, and just let him walk and just deal with Campbell. But if he wants to go cheaper than that, then I think 100% you bring him back. But I just think his market value is going to be pretty high, because I think he's one of the top linebackers in this free agency. So I probably just let him get overpaid, goes somewhere else, and we can just work with Campbell.
Yeah, because most teams that would be looking to get Dean don't have players like Campbell and Bond on their teams. So that's why they can afford and need to afford to go after a guy like Dean. Okay. And then Blankenship. So what happened to him this past year?
I mean, he wasn't terrible, but coverage-wise, I just don't think he just was as strong. I think
no reasoning behind it, schematic change, injury, anything. Just
I think it was just
down year.
Just a down year. Like there was nothing that changed with the scheme, nothing with that. A lot of it could be because he was working with Andrew Mukumba back there, and Mukumba really struggled in coverage at times.
Okay.
And that might have put Reed Blankenship in some bad positions. So that could play a role in it. But I don't think Reed Blankenship is bad at all. Like, if the Eagles wanted to bring him back, I would be cool with it, just because we need stability at safety. I don't like Sidney Brown. I don't think he's a starting safety in this league. He's a very good special teamer, though. So I think that helps him tremendously, because I do think Sidney Brown is one of the top special team guys, possibly in the league, but no doubt one of the top two on the team, outside of maybe Keely Ringo. So I would keep Brown only for special team purposes only. But I thought Marcus Epps played really well too when he filled in for Mukumba. So, if they wanted to offer Marcus Epps a contract, maybe I don't know if they would give him a veteran's minimum, but I would bring him back. I thought he played really well. But for Reed Blankenship, I mean, I like him enough that I think he's a good tackler. He struggled in coverage at times, but I do think the issues with Mukumba and then the inconsistency with Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo at CB2, I think might have caused some of those problems as well, but played well, down the stretch at the end of the season. So I would lean towards re-signing him and bringing him back just to have some stability in the secondary.
Speaking of Jackson, what are they going to do there?
That's tough, because I was very critical of him at the beginning of the year, but I'll tell you what, the last month and a half, he was really good. I thought he played great football, except for the wild card game. He was very bad in that game. But I thought he played really well late down the stretch. I think you still let him walk. I don't bring him back. I personally would like the Eagles to draft a cornerback. They just have had a good history of what they've done with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, and a lot of that was Christian Parker coaching them up. But I still feel very confident that if they got a CB2 like in the second round or even the third round, I think that would be a good option for them. I don't know if I would use free agency, and I don't know if I would bring back a Dory Jackson to do that. I would probably prefer another veteran who's maybe cheaper and just more reliable. Someone like a Rasul Douglas, I think would fit really well at that CB2 position, but I still would like him to draft another one. I know they got Mac McWilliams, but I think Mac's right now, his trajectory is probably going to be more of a special teams guy. I don't know if he's actually going to get a shot. He had a shot to get the CB2 job in training camp and didn't really take it. So I think for now, he's probably more of a special teams guy. So I would probably use the draft to maybe find a CB2 in the second or third round. And then, you could get a veteran like a Rasul Douglas to maybe fill in there just because I think he's a little more consistent than a Dory Jackson is.
Okay. Let's before I ask you specifically for the needs, which players, let's go over the rookies first. You already talked about Campbell, Makuba. Well, actually, so Makuba, he's definitely was drafted to be the future right away at that position. Did he disappoint? Was it just typical rookie issues, or is everything okay and he'll just be fine? He's just a rookie. What else is he going to do?
Yeah, I think Makumba got better later, late in the season. I think it's the beginning of the year. He just really struggled in coverage.
Okay.
Just did not know where to go at times. Would get burned very easily. I think back to that Buccaneers game in week 4. He was just horrendous in coverage in that game, but he did get better as the year went on. And it was disappointing when he broke his foot against the Cowboys because broke his ankle because I thought he was trending in the right direction. So I think he just needs more playing time, but I think he'll be a solid starter. I don't know if he's going to be a star safety in the NFL, but I do think for the most part, he played well enough that he deserves to be back in the starting lineup next year and, continue to get his reps and, continue developing as a starter.
What about Munden? And you mentioned McWilliams, both couple of 5th-round picks. Are they? Did you see anything in either one of those players that leads you to believe that they could be a better contributor this upcoming season or in the upcoming seasons?
To be honest with you, this draft class I don't think it was really as strong as they've been in the past. I think it was really Campbell and Makumba. I mean, Munden, if Dean ends up not getting re-signed, then Munden ends up moving up and could get in the rotation, but he's still going to be behind Jeremiah Trotter Jr. because he'll get more reps. But I mean, even like Ty Robinson, I was excited about him at the beginning of the year, and he barely played this year. He had a good game. I believe it was against the Giants. He had a really good game, but like outside of that, Ty didn't really play at all. So I think there's still a lot of questions about this draft class and where they're at. I'm hoping, this upcoming year they may get a little more playing time, but really it was just about Jahad Campbell and Andrew Bakumba, and I thought they both played really well. So they at least knocked it out of the park with the first 2 picks of the draft. It's just a matter of, okay, what about everyone else and where they're at?
And we talked about the 2 tackles. Did Drew Kendall get any action with all the injuries?
I think he might have played maybe a little bit at guard because even at center when Cam Jurgens was hurt, it was Brett Toth who was the replacement and the starter when Cam was out for like a game or 2. So yeah, not much production out of the offensive line either. So there's a lot of question marks with the draft class outside of Campbell and Makumba.
Are they going to bring back Braden Mann?
I hope so. He's one of the top punters in the league, and I would. This might be a weird thing to say, but I think he might be the most important free agent to get. I do think the field position game is really underrated, and I thought Braden Mann did a really good job last year. He's gotten better. Like he had a career season last year for the Eagles, so I would make the argument that the number one priority for this team is to make sure at least Braden Mann comes back and they have their punter. I mean, they could go in the drafting and get one, but I think Braden Mann is just really reliable. He's still fairly young. Like, they can keep him there for a long time. He struggled his first 3 years with the Jets, but it's the Jets, so I would maybe just account for that. But since he's been with the Eagles for the last 2 to 3 years, I thought keeps getting better and better. So I would 100% re-sign him.
Are there any players on the team who might end up getting cut to save any additional cap?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this question, and I was really thinking about it, and I was like, the only player I could possibly think of that I think would be a cut that would help the team out financially would be Michael Carter. But that's because, if you cut him, you save it was $8.7 million with him to the salary cap. And, if Cooper DeJean was if there was more commitment that he would play on the outside, then I would keep Michael Carter, because you would just put him as the starting slot corner, because I think he would actually do a pretty good job with it. But Fangio does not like the idea of Cooper DeJean playing on the outside. And when he did play on the outside, it was inconsistent. Like, Cooper DeJean is made to be in the slot. And that's just because, his coverage skills are really good, but he's a great tackler. Like, he's one of the best tackling quarterbacks in the NFL. And you would rather have him in the slot so he can go after those tight ends and running backs and help in run support, because that's where he can be really good. So you would rather have DeJean stay there and not on the outside. So with Michael Carter, I don't trust him to be on the outside, because he even before he came to the Eagles, he was inconsistent with the Jets. Like, when he got his contract extension, he kind of fell off the map a little bit.
Yeah, there were injuries. That's really what did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and when he returned, it just wasn't the same. So he needed to change his scenery.
Yeah. So I wouldn't keep him personally on the team. If we can save $9 million and use that money elsewhere, then I would absolutely cut him. And, again, we'll find another CB2 either with a veteran in free agency or in the draft, but we don't need Michael Carter anymore. I think that was just Howie Roseman panicking a little bit last year, that it just wasn't working out at cornerback. So he's just kind of traded for anybody he can get, with him and Jair and Alexander, and neither one worked out at all.
Are there any young players that fans outside of Philly don't realize could end up with bigger roles than expected this upcoming season? And could be anybody.
I mean, I personally love Darius Cooper, the wide receiver. He had a phenomenal preseason, and he was an undrafted rookie out of Tarleton State, played really well in the Bengals game, caught a touchdown in that game. He was a leading receiver, and that was the game that really helped him make the roster. And a lot of it was also Johnny Wilson getting hurt and being out for the season, so that helped. But Cooper got to play more as the season went on. His stats are not going to wow you, but he's a talented receiver. My hope is, if we don't get a wide receiver in the draft, that Darius Cooper ends up being, replacing Jahad Dotson and be that wide receiver 3 that they need him to be. Because I do think there is great potential with him, but he will have competition, because I think Johnny Wilson had a really good training camp too before his injury. So I would definitely say Darius Cooper, keep an eye on him. I love Tank Bigsby.
But should we also keep an eye on Johnny Wilson then?
Yeah. But I don't know if Johnny Wilson really fits the slot receiver per se, because he's 6'6", so he's going to be probably more like an outside receiver. But he made drastic improvements in training camp compared to his first year or so in the NFL. So I would definitely say watch out for Johnny Wilson too.
Okay, who else were you about to?
Tank Bigsby. I really hope the Eagles figure out a way to get him more carries. This was a guy that averaged 5.9 yards per carry, just really solid back. Every time he touched the ball, he was gaining positive yards. Honestly, he was a more effective runner than Saquon Barkley is. He just could find that hole and just hit it quicker than Barkley could. So I really hope Tank Bigsby, comes back and gets way more production in his offense, because I think he could really help Saquon Barkley out if they can take carries away from Barkley, but give more to Bigsby.
Okay. And Will Shipley, has he been a disappointment?
I don't know if I would say he's been a disappointment. It's just he's more used on special teams as a returner, and then he's more used in the passing game. I think just Bigsby broke out at the right time, and the Eagles were like, well, this isn't broken, so we're not going to fix it. Let's just keep him as the backup because he's clearly the most productive running back per carry out of anyone on the team. So I wouldn't necessarily say Will Shipley was a disappointment. A.J. Dillon, 100% was a disappointment. I have no idea what happened with him. He had a muff kickoff in the Week 6 Giants game and then fumbled two or three plays after that, and that was it for him. Never played again. So Dillon was a massive disappointment, but I think Shipley is still a solid number 3 running back.
Okay. That should be something to keep an eye on in Dynasty football.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and is there anybody on defense that fit the mold?
I think Jalen Hunt's going to be a superstar in this league if he can improve upon what he did last season. I just everything that guy could do. I think he played wide receiver in high school or something like that. So he is a freakish athlete at the edge rusher position. So I'd love to see him, get more involved in that aspect. I thought he had a great season. He was just another guy like Tank Bigsby, just super productive, but he actually played a lot more. And I think Fangio really loves him for the system, for being a scheme fit. So I would love to see Jalen Hunt play a lot more there. Outside of that, I'd love to see Ty Robinson play because I just thought he played really well in preseason. Byron Young is a really interesting name to watch out for. I thought he played really well late in the season when Jalen Carter got hurt too. He really stepped up and kind of played similar to what made Morrow and Jordan Davis so good and getting pressure on the quarterback. I know a lot of people have been talking about him being potentially cut and trying to save some money, but I thought he played I thought he played well enough that I would keep him. And I thought he showed some surprising stuff that I don't think anyone was expecting late in the season.
Okay. Now let's get to one of the big segments. Anytime I have one of our guests on to talk about the offseason, and that is team needs. Now you've already gone through some of them. So I asked this a question to all of my guests, and that is there a specific need though that is clearly a much bigger need than any other need?
I would say, just because we're down in numbers, I would say tight end for sure is a big need, especially if you don't bring back Dallas Goedert. I think that ends up being the number one need.
So would it surprise you then that when we did our first mock draft, Kenyon Sadiq was the pick for our top 2 scouts over at Ourlads? Of course, this is our Pro Line TV production is part of the Ourlads Football Network. And we did a Ourlads 1.0 mock draft just last week. And so this was the first one, and Sadiq was the player. So that should not surprise you then.
No, he's been on a lot of mock drafts, and I love Sadiq. I think he is super athletic. I think he can do the things Dallas Goedert can do a little bit better in the passing game. I think the blocking is maybe going to have to improve a little bit. I think Goddard may have the edge on him with that, but I think you can develop that. So honestly, if we don't bring back any of our tight ends, Kenyon would be my number one, probably my number one choice. And if he's taken before the Eagles take him, then I think you got to consider either wide receiver or a CB2.
Okay, so tight end would be one. And what would you put second, corner or wide receiver?
It depends on what they do with AJ Brown.
With AJ,
yeah.
Okay.
I would maybe just on the safe side get a wide receiver, even if AJ Brown stays, just because you're still going to need a number 3 receiver that you could potentially develop into a wide receiver too, if you end up trading AJ maybe in the middle of 26 or 2027 season. So I'd probably go wide receiver, and I like Tyson. I think Tate is really good too. I think he's a big playmaker, but I feel like he's more of a slot receiver in the NFL. So I don't know if he would play on the outside. I know, Denzel Boston's another big name that I've seen a lot of mock drafts go to the Eagles, but it really just depends on where he ends up landing because he can go before or after.
Yeah. And then because taking a look at the cornerback spot, these are the 2 guys that were drafted first on our mock. And McCoy, he will go high, even though he was out last year. And it does look like those will definitely be the top 2 guys that are going to get drafted. But you never know. It is possible McCoy's going to slip. Anything's possible once they take a look at his medical. And if he slips to the Eagles, has Howie had any sort of history either for or against drafting players with injury histories that you could recall?
I don't think so. I don't know if he's particularly picky about that. Now, he will take risks on guys that have like character issues that maybe have kept them off the field and stuff. Because Jalen Carter had that speeding incident at Georgia, and they still drafted him, and he dropped to them, and he's now one of the top 5 defensive tackles in the league. So I don't think there's anything that would really hold back the Eagles from going after somebody, whether it's injury or personal stuff. I think if they know they can get value out of him, because Jahad Campbell is actually a perfect example. He was injured and didn't participate. All right, I don't know if he participated in the combine or didn't really do much in the combine. He didn't do anything in the pro day, so but he came in injured, and the Eagles still drafted him, and he started from day one and played really well. So
yeah, because some of the things again with wide receiver, I think the consensus is those top 4 guys, they're going to get drafted in the top 20, top 25 at the most. But then once those top 4 guys go, anything's possible. Anybody can end up number 5. And that number 5 guy could be a second-round pick, could be a first-round pick. Tight ends with Sadiq, there is a major drop-off because he is so good.
Yeah.
There's still going to be a lot of good tight ends in this class, just that he's so good. He's the only number 1 draft pick. So that's what you also have to take into consideration. And at corner, as I mentioned, McCoy and Delane, those are going to be the top 2 guys. But Terrell, Abney, both of them are expected to potentially also land late in the first round.
Terrell's been a name that has been connected to the Eagles a lot. I would keep an eye on him. He would be one that I would be okay being a CB2. I think he could develop in that role. But he's been the only corner that I've really seen in that spot. And McCoy as well, but McCoy's was like a month or 2 ago, and he's kind of risen up the rankings since. So I think it's really Terrell, or Eagles just hold off to the 2nd or 3rd round to get a corner.
Okay. Number 4 need. Would it be offensive line?
Yeah, I think you have. If Howie loves somebody so much in the draft that he thinks if he drafts the right tackle to replace Lane Johnson,
it could be first.
I feel like you kind of have to take that shot in the first round. I just don't know if the offensive lineman in this draft where the Eagles are going to be landing is going to be worth it to go that high. So I'm kind of hoping that Lane Johnson just says, hey, I'll stick it out for 1 more year and keep playing. And then maybe the Eagles can use, maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick on a tackle, or wait till next year to get one.
Yeah, there it looks like 4 guys. Those top 4 on the list here look like first rounders. And so it just all depends, because I'm not sure. I think Fano is the number 1 guy, but I don't think there's an offensive tackle in this class that is like oh my God, this guy is awesome. He has to be considered like one of the top picks in the draft. That's not the case. But all 4 of those guys could be drafted in any order, to tell you the truth. There's still going to be a lot of work to be done before we figure all that out. And I expect at least one of them probably will be available, at least for the Eagles.
Yeah, I would say I know Proctor's name has been connected to the Eagles a little bit, so I would maybe watch out for that. But if not, I know Freeling's name has been named on a lot of the 3-5 round mock drafts. So
the Georgia guy, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Eagles love Georgia players. So the Eagles are always connected to them no matter what. So,
okay. And then at guard, there's only 1 first round guy, and that is Penn State's lineman. And he's probably going to be a really good one. But you don't expect that would be the way they would go. If they're going to draft someone in the first round, it's going to be a tackle, not a guard.
Yeah, I don't think they really need a guard. I mean, when Landon Dickinson's healthy, he's one of the best guards in the league. So I'm
Sure.
not concerned about that. I thought Tyler Steen played well late in the season. So
Okay.
if the Eagles need to do anything at guard, I would say Mekhi Becton maybe gets a look at to be brought back, because it sounds like he's going to get cut from the Chargers anytime soon, sometime in the offseason. So they could go his route. But otherwise, yeah, they probably don't really need a guard, because I think Breck Tolt is actually a really solid backup that can play guard and center, because he did both last year. So I would keep him around, and then Pryor I wouldn't even worry about, because I don't think he'll be back.
Yeah, and he'll be cheap enough where they should be able to bring him back, right? Toast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, the last need.
I would say edge rusher. I think just because there's still uncertainty with if they pass on Jalen Phillips and they don't end up signing him, then I think it becomes a bigger problem. But I'm still very high on Jalen Hunt and Nolan Smith, and I think those guys can play really well.
So even if they can't resign Phillips, you don't think that they would all of a sudden look at their first round and say, "Oh, we have to get an edge rusher early"? You think they could wait in the second or third round?
I don't think so, but when I watch the Senior Bowl and I watch Zion Young, and I'm like, dude, that guy can play. I mean, the way he was at the Senior Bowl, he was absolutely killer. I would almost be like, man, I wouldn't mind taking a risk on him in the first round but the edge rusher position is actually really good in this draft for.
It is.
So I mean, the potentially, yeah, up to maybe height. Maybe all of them, all 10 of those guys could be first round picks very easily. So. I mean, this might be the time that if Eagles want to get an edge rusher that they really like, this might be the draft to do it. There might be bigger needs. So, if they don't bring back Jalen Phillips, yeah, maybe they do end up just going after one of those rookies in the first round and move on. But if they can get Jalen Phillips, then I would wait till day 3 to go get an edge rusher.
Okay, well, you answered all of the questions for today and did a great job as always, Anthony. Of course, there's still the unknown factor there at defensive coordinator that I'm assuming we're going to find out very soon. So we'll see what direction that takes the Eagles. And then it's on to free agency, the draft. We'll look to speak with you again for sure right after the draft. That's pretty much when most of the offseason deals and personnel moves are complete. And then we can find out how the Eagles did this offseason. In the meantime, take a look at the links in the description of this video. That's where you can follow Anthony and the work that he does covering the Eagles. Look, if something big happens, of course, I'll give you a ring and hopefully we'll be able to hook you up for a few minutes and talk about something that might be very newsworthy. But other than that, Anthony, I appreciate your time as always. And are you going to be doing anything yourself podcast wise between now? I mean, what's your situation as far as podcasting?
Maybe not too much podcasting right now, just very heavy into off-season work with the Eagles and Bears and Vikings, Ravens, Browns, just all kinds of different things with the writing. So I would just say, just stay tuned. Just got a ton of stuff planned for this offseason and just covering every aspect of the Eagles.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
You got it. All right. That's Anthony Miller, Inside the Eagles. Check out the links in the description. Anthony knows a lot about what's going on there in Philly, and if you're an Eagles fan, you can really find out a lot of information to help you prepare for the offseason. Okay, so that's our Eagles talk. Now we are going to also talk later this week. Actually, I think we only have one more interview scheduled this week. That's Baltimore on Thursday. That's with Tony Lombardi. So definitely have a lot to discuss there. They have a new head coach. So we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday. Now, something could come up. We came this close to booking Fred Greetham of the Cleveland Browns on Wednesday. We just could not get a time that made a lot of sense. Fred's going to go on vacation for a couple of weeks. We'll talk Cleveland Browns in a couple of weeks when he returns. But I am actively working the phones and making sure that we have a minimum of 2 interviews a week. I'm going to try to push it to 3. even 4, because the sooner we can get all these interviews in, the better, because we've got to do 32 of them before we hit the draft. And I want to make sure that we have 32 of them actually before April. So still a long way to go. I think we're not even a third through. We already have all of our interviews so far that we've conducted in the library. You can check it out, of course, here at Proline TV and over at Ourlads on the Ourlads channel. And that is going to do it. So later tonight, I'll be talking some golf, previewing the Waste Management Phoenix Open. That's at 7 o'clock tonight. And then as far as our Super Bowl coverage, check out on Wednesday. Jim Feist is going to be at Don DeMarco's in Las Vegas doing his live show from the restaurant. So that'll be on Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. And then Playbook ATS podcast returns. Mark, Jim, Andy, and I will also get together and talk about the Super Bowl on Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. So that's what it looks so far for our football coverage. And then we've got so much more coverage on Proline TV, including our NASCAR coverage tomorrow as we preview the Daytona 500. Horse racing coverage continues every Thursday. And then, of course, right now it's heavy into college basketball season. And I am going to be back on Friday, late in the day, probably more often than not. I'm not sure if I'll do that this Friday or not because I've got another schedule situation. But college basketball is going to start really getting a lot more playing time here on Proline TV as we get closer to March Madness. Thanks for tuning in once again to Proline TV and the Ourlads Football Network. Again, thanks to Anthony Miller. We'll see you guys next time.